On a busy news day, and we're trying to get to the bottom of it. Prosecutors right now are offering a redacted version of Special Counsel Jack Smith's filing. That had to be made public today. It was in this newly unsealed court paper. We're learning that former President Trump resorted to crimes in a bid to cling to power after the 2020 election.
So when it appeared as though the events on January 6th were leading to be a violent effort to overthrow the election results, one of Trump's campaign employees literally said, quote, "Make them riot. Do it."
We don't know much more than that. A lot of this stuff was going to be coming out anyway. We're going to be getting the latest on that and a legal to look at what is being revealed here and whether it's giving us any information, anything we don't know.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. One place I didn't expect to see the bombshell Jack Smith report covered was on Fox News. And as you can imagine, the Trump team are taking it very well.
Put this in legal context for us. Obviously, the political context is obvious. We are just under 5 weeks until the presidential election, and we're going to hear from the Trump team that this is election interference. It's being dropped right before the election. But put it in the legal context for us.
There's a quote in here from Jack Smith that I think sums up his approach very well. He says, quote, "The through line of Trump's efforts was deceit. The through line of these efforts was not doing his job as president. He was acting deceitfully." So Jack Smith here, this is his brief, and he's saying to Judge Chutkan, all the stuff that's in our new slimmed down indictment, it's all okay. None of it is entitled to immunity, and we should be able to proceed to trial on it.
Oh, that's gonna hurt! Just when you thought this week couldn't get worse for the former president, his VP pick bombed in front of the world, and then his son that he never loved walked headfirst into a trap.
The media has radicalized the people that are trying to kill my father. I've had to deal with that twice now in the last 2 months. I've had to have that conversation with my 5 young children twice in the last 2 months about someone trying to shoot their grandfather. You know, that didn't just magically happen. That's not him. That's a media-created fake Russia scenario. They ran with it for years. Even when it was disproven, they still ran with it. You know, that environment wasn't just created by Donald Trump.
Okay, but can I say, you can't blame, and everyone wants your dad to be safe. No one wants the threats against his life to happen, but you can't blame the media for those threats. There's been no evidence that's what drove those.
And allows people to have a platform to call someone literally Hitler every day for 9 years, it creates it. Okay. Whether you want to believe it or not, that's a fact.
But as you know, J.D. Vance once likened your dad to Hitler as well. He questioned if he was America's Hitler.
Only for Jack Smith to enter the chat. Today, the special counsel outlined new details of former President Donald Trump and his allies' sweeping and, quote, increasingly desperate efforts to overturn his 2020 election loss. And in response to this filing, I'm sure the former president didn't expect to see it covered on his once treasured megaphone, Fox News, especially not in the way that host Neil Cavuto presented it.
On a busy news day, and we're trying to get to the bottom of it. Prosecutors right now are offering a redacted version of Special Counsel Jack Smith's filing. That had to be made public today. It was in this newly unsealed court paper. We're learning that former President Trump resorted to crimes in a bid to cling to power after the 2020 election. We don't know much more than that. A lot of this stuff was going to be coming out anyway. We're going to be getting the latest on that and a legal to look at what is being revealed here and whether it's giving us any information, anything we don't know. The timing of this, of course, a little more than about 5 weeks before the general election. We're on top of that, give you the latest on this. In the meantime, then there's this.
In the 165-page filing, prosecutors allege that Trump intentionally lied to the public, state election officials, and his own vice president in an effort to cling to power after losing the election, while privately describing some of his own claims of election fraud as, quote, crazy.
I was clear on that throughout. I was clear with President Trump throughout, all the way up to the morning of January 6th. But let's be clear on this point. It wasn't just that they asked for a pause. The president specifically asked me, and his gaggle of crackpot lawyers asked me to literally reject votes, which would have resulted in the issue being turned over to the House of Representatives, and literally chaos would have ensued. So, Martha, I just people can read the indictment, and frankly, I've said before, I had hoped it had not come to this point. You know, I don't know if the government can meet the standard, the burden of proof beyond reasonable doubt.
In the report, it states that, quote, when the defendant lost the 2020 presidential election, he resorted to crimes to try to stay in office. With private co-conspirators, the defendant launched a series of increasingly desperate plans to overturn the legitimate election results in 7 states that he had lost.
Committee about the calls, the kinds of calls that came into the sit room back at the White House from Mike Pence's security detail, but we didn't know much in Mike Pence's own voice. We didn't know what he would say under oath as a witness in a criminal proceeding, but now we do. Let me read to you. I'll read first what made Lisa Rubin gasp. Why make everybody wait? From page 142, quote, upon receiving a phone call alerting him, Donald Trump, that Pence had been taken to a secure location, witness P15 rushed to the dining room to inform the defendant, Donald Trump, in hopes that the defendant, Donald Trump, would take action to ensure Mike Pence's safety. Instead, after this person delivered the news, the defendant, Donald Trump, looked at him and said only, quote, so what? Lisa?
The cavalierness with which Donald Trump received that news certainly is news to me. You know, and it goes to Andrew's point about a number of the allegations here not being just things we've seen before in the January 6th committee and in the transcripts that were generated by that committee's investigation. There's a whole lot of new content here, Nicole, and that is just one part of it.
When Trump's effort to overturn the election through lawsuits and fraudulent electors failed to change the outcome of the election, prosecutors then alleged that the former president fomented violence, with prosecutors describing Trump as directly responsible for, quote, the tinderbox that he purposely ignited on January 6th. I mean, you can't get more damning than that.
First of all, I won in 2020 by a lot, okay? Let's get that straight. I won in 2020.
You know that this,
and if you look at all of the tapes, if you look at everything that you want to look at, you take a look at Truth to Vote, where they have people stuffing the ballot boxes on tapes, or
Mr. President,
let's go to recent. Well, wait a minute. Let's go to recent.
There was not significant widespread
We're trying
fraud.
to get recounts, real recounts, not just numbers of votes
widespread
cast.
corruption. There was not a sense of that. There were lawsuits, more than 50 of them, by your lawyers, some in front of judges that you appointed.
Look at Wisconsin.
Also alleged in the lengthy filing, which if you're still on the Hill site formerly known as Twitter, you'd see it trending, said that leading up to the violence of January 6th, an advisor to the Trump campaign literally said, quote, make them riot. Do it. And in further detail, it states how Trump allegedly heard from advisors who disproved his allegation, yet continued to spread his claims of voter fraud. Trump has been quoted as saying, it doesn't matter if you won or lost the election, you still have to fight like hell.
I was told if I got the same number of votes as the first time, 63 million, you can't lose, sir. We got many millions of votes more than that. Nobody's ever gotten more votes, sitting president. And they beat us by a whisker. It's the only thing they're good at. They're good at cheating in elections. They're good at nothing else, believe me. They're certainly not good at policy. But they beat us by a whisker. They beat us just by a little whisker. He beat us from the basement.
That's a far cry from the election was rigged. Sounds to me like you're saying you did lose in 2020.
There are 12 million votes more than that, more than anybody had ever got. We got the most votes of anybody, of any sitting president in history. And he beat us by a whisker. And it was a terrible thing. They used COVID to cheat. And it was a terrible thing. And then I watched. And I thought it was very, very sad because of, the election it brought great division to the country.
In these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I said that sarcastically, you know that.
And of course, in response to all of this, which you would think in a sane world would end Trump's chances, campaign spokesperson Stephen Chung said the release of the filing was an attempt to interfere with the upcoming election following Tuesday's vice presidential debate. But I mean, if anyone knows about interfering with an election and subsequently the results of it, it's the Trump campaign.
This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously,
with some elected officials or election officials last week about their concern about people who are trying to undermine our elections. Why didn't you answer the question last night during the debate about who won the 2020 presidential election?
Well, look, here's the simple reason. The media is obsessed with talking about the election of 4 years ago. I'm focused on the election of 33 days from now.
And then I think at the very end of the debate, we saw something extraordinary. Tim Walz asked J.D. Vance if Donald Trump lost the election. He was incapable of answering that simple yes-no question. J.D. Vance can only get so far from the man at the top of the ticket, and that was on display in that one moment.
And clearly, they're circling the drain.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.